Thanks for listening to English Go Podcast. To listen without advertisements or to read episode transcripts, visit englishgo.co.uk for more information.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Drive into summer with the Honda CR-V and Accord. Your fun-to-drive, weekend getaway vehicles. And when you drive a Honda, you're driving with the 2024 Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com Best Value brand. So hurry in to the Honda Summer Event.
See dealer for financing details based on 2024 Consumer Choice Awards from Kelley Blue Book. Visit KBB.com for more information.
Imagine earning a degree that prepares you with real skills for the real world. Capella University's programs teach skills relevant to your career so you can apply what you learn right away. Learn how Capella can make a difference in your life at capella.edu.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you are listening to this podcast. I have received a message from a listener called Irene. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. That's how we would say it in English, from Spain. She goes on to say that she likes listening to this podcast a lot. She's a big fan. Thank you very much. And that she listens almost every day whilst running, which I think is amazing. I mean, I'm not the world's best runner. I'm pretty bad at running, to be honest. But when I do, I usually listen to some sort of upbeat music. I can't imagine listening to a podcast like mine and running at the same time. I often listen to Japanese podcasts whilst walking, but yeah, if that works for you, that's great. I hope I'm able to give you enough motivation when you're running to carry on with your run and make it a good run. Anyway, the question that Irene asks, I think is, well, for me, it's a really, really interesting question. Well, actually, there's a couple of questions here. One of them is, do I feel judged by people when recording episodes? Another one is, am I happy having a podcast, and would I recommend doing this to other people? Or do I feel that maybe listeners can sort of overstep the boundaries, like thinking they know me too well and perhaps making things uncomfortable for me? And that makes, maybe that makes me want to stop sharing so much information. And she starts off by saying that she really appreciates how natural and honest and transparent I seem in these episodes, and says that it seems like I'm just being me, just talking to a friend, and says perhaps I'm a completely different person in real life, as a joke. But she likes the way that I talk to all of you in the podcast, even though you're strangers to me. There's a lot there. So how should I answer this? I think I will start by saying thank you, first of all, for noticing how I'm trying to make this podcast. It's always been my goal to sort of, going back a bit further, and as I mentioned in a recent episode, I started this podcast for my then girlfriend, now wife, so that she could improve her English. And I suppose because of that, I just started it, it was just like I was talking to her, really. That's the style I had. And then at some point, I was getting contacted by other people, and they were telling me how useful this podcast was to them. And I really started to think about it as, like a podcast that everyone who's learning English could potentially benefit from. And when I started thinking about this podcast seriously, that's when I sort of started thinking, what style do I want, for this podcast? And I thought it perhaps the most helpful thing, it it comes from something that I really wanted when I was, I still am studying Japanese, but when I was studying Japanese as more of a beginner, I really wanted like being able to listen to someone who's speaking to me just like they'd speak to one of their own friends, you know, in their own native language. I didn't want any like textbook style Japanese, but I wanted them to maybe speak to me just a little bit more kindly, you know, take a bit more care about the words that they might be using, just so I can understand what's being said better, you know, practice that skill. Because the listening skill is just like a reading skill. You know, it's something that you need to practice. You need to practice listening, but it's hard to practice listening if you can't understand what is being said. So I think it's better to practice and practice and practice using something that's, you know, a bit easier to understand. And then when you've got that basic listening skill down, or maybe even more, you know, intermediate listening skill down, maybe then you can start going on to like fully native English or Japanese or whatever. So that's the style that I wanted to use, you know, just being able to talk to everyone listening to this podcast, just like I'd talk to a friend, you know, same style of English. But as for the topics, almost all of these episodes are based around my, like, things that I do in daily life, or my opinions on certain things. So it's sort of become an online diary for me, and that was definitely not my intention when I started this podcast. If you look at some of the earlier episodes, or the earliest episodes, they were very much like topics around things to do with England. Like there's an episode about tea, there was an episode about pubs, there was an episode about, I don't know, public transport, or anything, you know, related to England or the UK. They were not so much about me. And then there's a good reason for that. It's because I don't like talking about myself, would you believe it? And I don't like sharing information publicly on the internet, would you believe it? And yet here I am making a podcast where I do exactly that, which is still a bit weird for me. Anyway, the reason it transitioned from talking about general topics to personal topics, the reason it moved from general topics to personal topics, is because I ran out of general topics to talk about. And if you're going to talk, you know, in the same way that you talk to a friend, which is how I'm doing this podcast, eventually you're sort of talking about yourself, aren't you? You know, when you talk to friends, you're talking about personal things, you're talking about your own life. And I also felt like that was going to be really useful for people who wanted to practice English listening, because it's just, like I said, it's like you sort of get your own English friend who's just talking to you and talking to you and talking to you. And maybe you don't understand everything, but it's okay, because you don't have to have a conversation. You don't have to understand everything. You don't have to reply to everything to, you know, to get some more English back. You can just listen and listen and listen and just keep talking. So I realized that it was a really good way to make a podcast. It was helping a lot of people. I was getting lots of lovely messages from people telling me how much they enjoyed the podcast, they enjoyed the topics, how much it had improved their listening ability, which I think that's what makes me most happy, to be honest. I mean, when I get a message saying, like, you know, I love the podcast and everything like that, that's great, and I love that, and that, you know, cheers me up and motivates me. But when I get a message saying, like, this podcast has helped my English, that's like, wow, you know, I'm doing something really good here. I'm doing something that's actually helping people. And that's a nice feeling. And I think it's because of knowing that I'm helping people that I keep doing this. As I said earlier, I'm actually, I don't share a lot of private information on the internet, apart from this podcast. I'm a bit weird. I think I'm a bit unusual. I am quite a shy person naturally, I think. But I don't tend to use Facebook. You know, I don't really bother with Instagram much. What else? What's all the other stuff? TikTok? I've never looked at it. I just don't really bother with all the social networking stuff, which is weird because I do like the whole idea, I really like. The idea of having this online sort of area, this portal of yours, where you can share your information with the people that you want to share it with, family, friends, and so on. I love that. I think that's a great idea. And I did, in the early days, use Facebook, but then it sort of changed into something else that just became about selling you advertisements, and I lost interest. Anyway, that's a completely separate topic. The point I'm trying to make is I really don't share, lots of information online, but I sort of do because of this podcast. And I'll be honest with you, there are a lot of times when I'm recording episodes and I'm thinking, what am I doing? I get this like weird feeling like I'm telling people about, I'm telling you, everyone listening, about my life, and I'm thinking, yeah, my life's not that interesting. Why do I think that it's going to be interesting for you? What am I doing telling you about my life? But I just remind myself, no, you're not listening because you want to hear about my life. You're listening because you want to listen to English. You want to improve your English listening ability. And when I flip it around like that, when I look at it with that point of view, I'm okay with doing it then. But I'm really not, I wouldn't describe myself as a very confident person. I don't really like, lots of people looking at me or getting lots of attention or things like that. So, sometimes I do think it's weird that I'm making this podcast. But I just, think about the people it helps, and then I'm okay with doing it. Now, I've realized that I've got quite a bit more to say about the questions that Irene has asked me, because it's just really, really good questions, to be honest. So I think I'm going to make this into a sort of 2-part episode and continue talking about this next time. So until then, I hope you've enjoyed it, and see you again soon. Bye-bye.
This podcast is brought to you by eHarmony, the dating app to find someone you can be yourself with. Why doesn't eHarmony allow copy and paste in first messages? Because you are unique, and your conversations should reflect that. eHarmony wants you to find someone who will get you. How are you going to know who gets you? If people send you the same generic conversation starters they message everyone else. Conversations that actually help you get to know each other. Imagine that. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up today.
Well, we got a minute. I'm going to buy that truck I've been wanting.
Wait, don't you need, weeks to shop for a car?
I don't. Carvana makes it super convenient to find exactly what I want.
Hold up. You're buying a car on your phone? Isn't that more of a laptop thing?
You can shop wherever you want.
I like to do my research, read reviews, compare models. Plus, Carvana has thousands of options. How'd you decide on that truck?
Because I like it.
Oh, that is a great reason.
Go to Carvana.com to sell your car the convenient way.
Thanks for listening until the very end of the show. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give my podcast a rating, or if you have the time, write a review. It's a really nice way of letting me know you enjoy these episodes and encourages me to make more of them for you. Thanks very much, and have a lovely day.